country club, Christian, I'm a zealot. Truth's gonna hurt, man, I ain't tryna sell it. And if you think you can refute it, you'll regret it. Cause that's the way it is, like it is, how I tell it. Paint a country club, Christian, I'm a zealot. Truth's gonna hurt, man, I ain't tryna sell it. And if you think you can refute it, you'll regret it. Cause that's the way it is, like it is, how I tell it.
Okay, firstly, I gotta address apologetics. It doesn't make sense, I'm not sorry, I don't get it. The fact that he was crucified means that we're all indebted. We should demand to have a culture that doesn't soon forget it. Every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess it. Christ is king, listen up, get the message. The time is short, the deception is impressive. The church itself is corrupted and wretched. They preach about grace, no righteousness expected. God gaze at the pulpit because their sin is accepted. The devil calls, they don't even try to reject it. They're employed by Satan, they are tax exempted.
Ain't a country club, Christian, I'm a zealot. Truth's gonna hurt, man, I ain't tryna sell it. And if you think you can refute it, you'll regret it. Cause that's the way it is, like it is, how I tell it. Ain't a country club, Christian, I'm a zealot. Truth's gonna hurt, man, I ain't tryna sell it. And if you think you can refute it, you'll regret it. Cause that's the way it is, like it is, how I tell it.
It's neither land of the free, nor is it
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Main Character Podcast, made possible by the Cult of Khan. That is you guys. I am the Count of Khan, and thank you for being here. Today, we are joined by a very special guest. But before we get to that, I would like to take a moment to thank you all for being here today, for joining us. And of course, since we are all members of God's kingdom, we would like to take the opportunity to say that we are kingdom-oriented, we are concerned with conquest. Of course, and kingdoms are known for conquest, but we also believe that God is king of the world. He created everything and everything in it. And so, as conquest-minded kingdom people, kingdom vampires, we believe in the idea of reclaiming things. Everything in the world was created by God. It all belongs to Him. And because of that, we believe it is our responsibility to reclaim signs and symbols and logos and images. And so, on a day like today, as we come to celebrate what is arguably one of the most evil holidays in the land, we have to remember that all holidays are derived from some kind of a pagan holiday or otherwise, and so it is our goal to begin reclaiming all of these holy days, holy festivals, the holidays, so to speak, for the purpose of the kingdom and for advancing this new culture that we're creating right here. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome to the channel today Wendy from Spirit and Truth, Wendy, the channel there. So without any further ado, Wendy, welcome to the Cult of Khan, and thank you for being here for level 66.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you.
I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you back. Everybody always loves when you're on the channel, and of course we get the opportunity to act kooky because it is, the special spooky episode of the Main Character Podcast. So again, it's great to have you here, Wendy, and thanks to all of you for being here with us tonight for a very special spooky episode, Vampires and the Undead Pope. Once again, I am the Count of Khan, and we are joined today by Wendy of Spirit and Truth, Wendy, and today we're going to be discussing a bit of that vampiric stuff. So again, without any further ado, welcome all of you. Now, I seem to have lost my tabs. Oh, nope, there they are. So I guess we'll start with the very first thing, which is that we're talking today about vampires and the Undead Pope. Evidently, that's the title of the video, but I also want to make a moment to say that we have a few theories today to present about vampires, and we're just going to have a really casual discussion and an opportunity to tear into some of our theories and ideas about that stuff, and we'll be looking into a few recent stories that have broken about, in this case, I guess, parasites and other things. So that ties into everything we're talking about today. So without, again, any further ado, I will pull up the first of our little tabs here today. I guess before we do that, I want to take the opportunity to thank all of our wonderful supporters over on patreon.com/thecultofkhan. Thank you guys for being here and for making this possible. All right, let's go ahead and take out the look thing. So the first thing that we were talking about, right, was the fact that you were searching this stuff up, and you found out that there was recently a discovery about a satellite virus called Mini Flare
Yeah, there's actually like a couple different well, there's a virus and there's a like a bacterial infection. So we've kind of got both angles covered in this like little theory hypothesis. And
Interesting.
it's funny because like right before I started researching it, I already had this thought in mind. And when I went to Google, it's all, hey, there's recent vampire virus that's been discovered. And I'm like, pretty sure it's reading.
It's reading your mind.
Yeah, it's reading my mind. It's a little vampiric in and of itself.
Yeah, it sounds about right. Some sort of supernatural thing. Well, they do listen to your conversations. I mean, I think that's probably something that most people are coming to terms with, but I don't know how exactly the AI surveillance network is vampiric. But, a lot of people would look at the way the world is now and the sort of occult criminal mafia that seems to be running the place. And a lot of people would argue that there's something truly dark and evil about them, something that may even transcend the nature of their wickedness, but even perhaps might tie into their species or their genetic makeup. And of course, we've heard many theories over the years regarding the idea of the world being run by reptilian shapeshifters, so to speak. And I think that ties into what we're talking about today as well. So I'm very excited to dig into this with you, Wendy.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So the first thing we have here is Wendy's discovery about this recent, it's called a satellite virus called Mini Flare that parasitizes other viruses. So it's a parasitic virus found in Maryland in 2019 and a recently studied rare biological parasite that reportedly feeds on a host's blood while extending its lifespan, potentially through tissue regeneration. Very interesting. So it's almost like it's undead. It makes the host, regenerate instead of dying. That's actually crazy.
Yeah. There was some sensational type of posts that had gone up on like Facebook and stuff like that we're still able to find. But, it's funny because the AI overview automatically is like, no, this didn't happen. And it's like, but did it or didn't it? Because like, where's everybody getting all the, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so like they already had community notes for it, like saying that this wasn't real.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
This looks like a Washington Post article. Why don't we check this really quick? This seems to be about it.
All right.
So, of course. I'll read it for free. Oh, man, you've got to be kidding me. I'll do it. You monsters. The real monsters are the writers of this newspaper. All right, scientists have discovered what may be the first vampire virus, dubbed Mini Flare. The unusual microbe was found attached to another virus in a soil sample from Maryland. And this article...
Can I just point something out real quick?
Sure.
The fact that it was discovered in 2023 after the Hokey Pokey went around, I'm just saying.
It
ties in with like another theory later.
It is interesting. Okay, well, hold on to that. Like the timing of it is kind of strange to say, okay, well, within just a couple of years of, like you said, Hokey Pokey is a good name for it. It was a dark and scary time. So this is what it looks like. We've got a big thingy with a little thing stuck on it. I mean, obviously that doesn't tell us much, but we understand. It says the Mind Flayer.
It's the Mind Flayer and the Mini Flayer. So you've got the Mind Flayer, which I believe is the bigger one, and then you've got the Mini Flayer that's attached to the neck of it.
Oh, yikes.
So, yeah.
Okay, so it kind of does have like a neck right here. And you can see this one's like wrapped around the neck, like leeched onto it. That's so crazy. Let's read a little bit about it. In March 2020, Tagide de Carvalho saw something truly strange, something she thinks no other scientist has ever seen before, a virus with another smaller virus latched onto its neck. The backstory of this viral attachment is like a masterclass in how wild and weird biology can be. The two microbes are both bacteriophages, viruses that infect bacteria that were harvested from a clump of dirt in Poolesville, Maryland. Bacteriophages, also called simply phages, are among the most abundant organisms on Earth. There can be millions in a gram of dirt, but with a special kind of microscope that uses a beam of electrons to capture images. De Carvalho witnessed a truly bizarre moment, kind of like a wildlife photographer who captures an animal behavior that no one had anticipated. I could see literally hundreds of them had this little guy attached to the neck, and it was clearly not random, said DiCarvalho, who manages the Keith R. Porter Imaging Facility at University of Maryland at Baltimore County. We know that viruses can do some amazing, interesting things, but this is just another new thing that no one could have predicted we would see. In a recent study in the Journal of the International Society for Microbial Ecology, DiCarvalho and colleagues explain how the viral odd couple probably came to be. The small virus called mini-flayer lost the ability to make copies of itself inside cells, which is how viruses reproduce. So evolution devised a clever parasitic workaround. I don't like the look of that at all. So something evil lost the ability to reproduce, and so now it becomes a parasite looking for hosts that it can use by grabbing onto their neck. This is all, I get the vampire connection for sure.
Yeah.
So mini-flayer takes advantage of another virus dubbed mind flayer by grabbing onto its neck, and when they enter cells together, mini-flayer utilizes its companion's genetic machinery to proliferate. Is it an embrace, a stranglehold? DiCarvalho compares the relationship to viral hitchhiking. Her collaborator, Ivan Errol, a computational biologist at UMBC, likens it to a vampire sinking its teeth into its prey. It's not a perfect analogy, but he notes that sometimes when they find Mind Flayer alone, they can find bite marks where Mini Flayer's tendrils were attached. Wow, that's so spooky. So it's literally like a vampire virus.
Yeah.
And it's
Can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, no, you can't. And it's crazy because it ties into all the stuff that we're talking about as well today about vampires. So as you guys know, vampire lore is really popular. It's really proliferated into many movies all the way back from like the original Bram Stoker's Dracula and other associated lore and tales, all the way up until modern day stuff that is much more proliferated than the old vampiric stories. You know, they were popular books, but they were considered to be like dark fiction, and so they weren't very popular. Obviously, we live in a much more, I guess you could say, degenerated culture than they used to. And so dark things are a lot more popular in the modern age, and I think a good example would be things like Twilight and other vampire movies and shows, the Underworld series and things like that. The popularity of vampires and vampire lore has grown substantially in the modern age and has led to the creation of many works of fiction. But the question is, with all of these stories stemming from a somewhat similar background, is it possible that there's any truth behind the lore of vampires? So we have a lot to discuss.
Think there's truth.
I agree. Yeah, I think there's truth to it. So what is it that in your experience has led you to think that there might be some more truth to these stories than just what's written on the surface there?
Just the fact of what I know about the deletes and everything that they do, you know, that I don't want to like really get too deep into it, but the, you know, with the children and everything and the,
I'll say
what
it
I
for
call
you.
the Philosopher's Stone. Yeah,
Sure,
is it allowed? Like, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. We always have to be kind of careful on
The
these
fountain of
platforms.
youth.
Yeah.
Something
like
I mean,
that.
everybody. Yeah, exactly. And so it's not that hard to like make the connection, and like being in the medical field, I understand where like the natural body host, right, from what a parasite would need in order to make the host actually work.
Right.
So
there's
definitely truth in it, and lore comes from somewhere, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
That's like the biggest thing. Is like what we're told as myth is actually real history in other places.
Right.
So
real stories become myth and myths become legend. And then we look at this stuff as though it was always just imaginary, but is it possible that it really did come from somewhere real? And I think that there are possibilities that could make it true. Generally, and you know, we see vampire lore broken up into subsections. You'll find individual intellectual properties that kind of take one swing about it versus another. It's really common in these lores to have, you know, differences in the way that the vampire power structure works. Like, for instance, in the original Bram Stoker's Stoker, I can't even remember his name.
Bram Stoker, yeah.
Stoker, not Stroker. That's a good one. Anyway, so he's had
lexicon.
right. Yeah. Whatever. Anyway, so his lore involves kind of like a head vampire, like almost what you could describe as a patient zero. And this guy, being the original Dracula, is the source of this viral infection, so to speak, right? He goes around claiming new victims. They get infected with the vampiric curse, the curse as they call it. And from there, more vampires are created who also proliferate the same curse. And of course, in the original vampire lore, they say, if you kill the host, the head vampire, that it breaks the chain of the curse and such. And I think that when you look at an old school piece of literature like that, it's very common for people to refer to things they don't understand as, say, magic or a curse. But I think there could be more to it than that, like what you said, that there could be a connection between some of this viral parasitic nature and the actual curse of vampirism. And what really made me interested about it was, when we mentioned in the discussion on the initial share here, was the fact that it has the ability to feed on its host's blood while extending its lifespan, potentially through tissue regeneration. And that's like, to me, that's the exact letter of the Dracula curse, right? You become an immortal being of incredible long lifespan, cellular regeneration, maximum like healing ability. It's very hard to kill vampires in lore, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that very interesting. Mm-hmm. So we have what the old world would have considered a curse, something potentially magic or born out of witchcraft, definitely attributed to evil. And what does that do? I mean, like we said, it gives agelessness to those who have it. Vampirism is known for being like an immortal disease because you become effectively undead, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of the old world, there was a book series that I have read in the past, and it was literally about vampires and immortals, and they were descendants of Atlantis.
Really?
And yeah.
Do you know
and
what it's
so
called?
I can't remember. I will try to find like the name of the book series. I don't recommend reading it. I was not saved when I read it.
It's pretty dark.
I'm just putting that out there. It's not that it's dark. It's like a little romantic kind of
it's
like
one of
vampire
those
type story. Yeah. I didn't know that getting into it. Like I read the synopsis and I was like, ooh, nanotech. And I was already into like conspiracy stuff back then, right? But
Yeah.
nah, I wasn't saved. But that was the reason why I really went into it. And plus I like vampire novels. Well, I did. And so here is like I wrote up like a little synopsis of it. So there are, let me go back to like the beginning here. So what it was is that the vampire, there was like a queen basically through like this whole thing, and Atlantis was destroyed by a catastrophic tsunami, which caused like everybody to be spread out, and a lot of people ended up dying and everything. So it kind of gives us like a little tidbit of what happened in Atlantis, if you want to believe that story. But they are considered immortals. They're descendants of Atlantis, and they are cursed with having nanotechnology controlling their bodies. The nanos require more blood in the body, thus the bodies developed vampire tendencies, which in turn developed the vampire mythology in this like little legend book that I read. So,
okay, so you basically have a vampire story that is creatively enough. It's like co-opting the Atlantis narrative that these people basically survived the fall of Atlantis and needed to be like regenerated by these nanites. Is that basically like little nanobots or whatever?
yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah,
Okay,
to
so
achieve their immortality. So they were supposed to have been programmed to help people who are sick, right? And
right.
during so like people have cancer, XYZ, whatever, and the original purpose of them was supposed to go into the body, do the healing that it needed, and then they were supposed to die off and basically excrete out of the body. But the problem is that the bodies are always dying every single day, so there was always something to regenerate. So it brings these people back to the state of like age 25, I think is what they say is like the perfect age in this series.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they created these things with the purpose of healing you, not realizing that the program would consider aging as part of a sickness. And so these little nanobots they created in Atlantis are working overtime to keep these people who are, I guess you could say, infected or infested with the nanobots alive.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
So then what? So they basically they intentionally infected themselves, so to speak, with these nanobots, these particles, these cells. And the cells are working to keep them alive, but the cells use excess human blood to restore the damaged cell structure. So in order to keep you alive, they have a high demand for human blood. That's effectively.
Yep.
Okay. And so what you're saying is in this story, the people with the cells are compelled either by the cells or by their own health or by their own, like, what is it that makes people want to start collecting blood other than just the need to use it for their regeneration?
Well, the issue was when they were in Atlantis, they were getting blood transfusions instead of biting people. But when Atlantis fell and the ones that survived came to where we live, because Atlantis is considered like a different, place from where we live. They actually came through like a dimension, kind of, is what happened, like a portal.
Weird.
And so, yeah. There was like a dome around Atlantis. I'm just saying.
So
like,
they came
so
from
many
another
parallels.
dimension, effectively. Like that's kind of the lore of it, is that it's another dimension. That's pretty crazy.
And so here's the little synopsis about the queen's sacrifice. I did copy and paste this into here. So it says, to save her people, the Queen of Atlantis bonded with the heart of Atlantis, sacrificing herself to create a protective shield around a part of the city. This action moved the shielded section to a different plane of existence, saving some of the Atlians.
Oh, okay. I'm not trying to interrupt you, but doesn't this happen on Disney's Atlantis? The main girl like becomes one with the crystal thing to make a shield that protects the city from that.
You're right.
So why though? Like why? I always have to ask, like, why is it that these two separate? Did that guy did the author of this book series watch Disney's Atlantis and then just like rip that off, or is there something we don't know about Atlantis? Right? Like, I don't know. We're talking about vampires, but this is a direct connection to Atlantis. It's very strange, right? You have post-Atlantis survivors who have maintained their health through, in this case, a man-made cellular nanobot thing. And then it makes them be blood hungry in order to contain that, to preserve that, right? Continue, sorry.
Right. Yeah, no, that's okay. So, they were getting transfusions in there. And after the survivors were forced to scatter across the world, which is how they ended up in our modern society, they evolved and grew fangs and everything. They didn't have fangs and all of that before the fall because they were getting transfusions. So the human body doesn't make enough blood for them to sustain the nanotechnology that's in their bodies. So they developed fangs. Therefore, they started, where else the purpose of them. And I believe in the book series that the fangs actually have like almost like a small hole inside it so that they bite,
That's actually really common in a lot of vampire lore, is that the fangs are like straws. They're like hollow, and so you bite them, and it actually is like a sucker, like you can proboscis out people's blood. Well, it's interesting because you have this microevolution, which is in a way kind of like what they discussed in this like mini flayer, mind flayer virus thing, where it basically changes the composition of the host body to better extend its lifespan, tissue regeneration and stuff. So it's following that same kind of lore as this vampire virus, and following that same track. And it's interesting because then you have these nanobots that are responsible for cellular repair, tissue regeneration, so to speak. And then it would make me think that, I guess, the cells became smart enough to know that the body needed an additional blood supply outside of itself that was no longer coming in the form of transfusions. So it's as if the nanobots actually micro-evolved the host body to have the features needed to become a blood predator so that it could get the blood it needs to maintain the host. It's actually very crazy. It's like it's smart. And it's interesting because you notice this with other parasites. Like I forget, I think it's toxoplasmosis or something. It's a virus, obviously, that gets into your cat box or whatever through cats trying to get to people. It's a very interesting observation to make, that the parasites seem to have some kind of a hive mind intelligence almost, where
Yeah.
they know what they're trying to do, right? I think there's more to say on that as we go
Yeah.
further
Yeah.
on.
There is. There is. Yeah. The Toxoplasmosis gondii is what it is, and the
Gandhi.
cats get it usually from hunting mice and stuff. The mice have it, and the mice will actually go to the cats like and entice them to try to get them to eat them so that they get infected with the parasite. So one thing I can say is if your cat is not an outside cat and a hunter, you're safe.
Well, you would
I
hope so, right? Like we hope that there's not.
I do find my cat extremely cute though, so you never know.
Well, is that part of it? Like you get infected and you
Yeah.
think your cat's really cute, and it's
Yeah.
mind controlling you.
That's what they yeah, well, I mean cats have a mind control all of their own.
Well, they
Fight me
do,
on
don't
that. Yeah.
Cats have fangs. They're little.
They do. They do.
I don't think cats are vampiric, but who knows? That is some crazy stuff. Well, it's interesting because you talk about this evolutionary concept. The idea that the virus is causing the host to evolve in order to continue to proliferate itself. And then you see that with the basic situation, the lore about vampirism. You have people who they get infected by it. It takes over their body. They become, undead. And a lot of the lore kind of says that they're cold-blooded. They have no heartbeat anymore. A lot of them have a weakness to sunlight or straight up burn up if they get caught in the sunlight, So there's a lot of like side effects and changes that are different versus, the average human. And it makes me wonder, if you have these evolutionary changes in the body, what kind of evolutionary changes would you have culturally as individuals who became infected with this virus? We recently watched this movie with is it Ethan Hawke and Willem Dafoe. It's one of my favorites. It's called Daybreakers, and it's a movie about vampires having essentially taken over the world or become the majority of the humanoid population, where regular warm-blooded humans are actually a minority in the world. And they're kind of being farmed in these factories to produce the blood for the population. So you can see, in a sense, a cultural evolution in that movie where not only have they developed, the aversion to sunlight and the need to consume blood and the sort of immortality factor, but that they also change culturally into a type of parasitic race that actually is surviving and thriving off of captured human beings who are being basically drained like farm animals for their blood supply. And of course, in that movie, we know that without too many spoilers, it becomes a problem for them because there's too many vampires and not enough humans left on Earth. The military's out hunting for for humans to use as food, and the economy's getting worse, the cost of blood soaring, and things getting worse as they're running out of blood supply. And one of the main plot points here is that they're trying to figure out how to create a blood substitute, which is actually something you see in a lot of vampire lore, which is that the vampire covens and members are trying to figure out how to preserve themselves beyond just hunting humans and animals, but a way to really create an independence from their need to hunt. It's a very interesting concept. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In that movie, the thing that I thought was the most interesting was the fact that obviously at some point Willem Dafoe realizes that there's a cure for vampirism, and the cure is an exposure to sunlight that is in a controlled amount. So you get like a big dose of sunlight, but not enough to like turn you to ash, And what happens is it cures them of the vampirism condition. And at some point later in the movie, the main character's brother attacks Willem Dafoe, who has become immune to the virus, who's no longer a vampire. And when these vampires feed on a person who has been cured of vampirism, the cure actually exists within their blood and spreads like a virus, causing people, the vampires who feed on those antibodies to become immune to vampirism themselves. In a way, cellular transmission seems to be the root of the lore, even in that movie itself, that there's something in the blood that gives these people both their vampirism and even at some point immunity to it as well. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about the fact. So when a vampire, and a lot of times in the lore is when they bite someone, right? They inject venom, and it also like numbs that area, right? It paralyzes their victim, right? And so when they're biting them again, it's almost like having an anti-venom happening. So it's like almost 2 bites like reverses it after that. You know what I mean? So it's spread through the blood that way, like an anti-venom, basically. That's like exactly what my mind went to.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought about it like, there's many blood-borne diseases, and the idea is that if you get infected blood into your body at all, like, hepatitis or HIV, you become infected, or there's a great potential for the infection of that stuff. So it's like, is vampirism not something like that? You get bit by someone, their saliva or blood enters your bloodstream, and you become infected with the disease, and the result of that is that you have a change in your body entirely. In the case of something like HIV, you have an immunodeficiency. But in this case, it's kind of like a more extreme alteration where, you become undead. But just like we were saying, when you get bitten and you become cured of the virus, it seems like now your blood contains something that's in essence toxic to vampires effectively, or at least toxic to the parasite that could be causing vampirism. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also, so something else actually just came to mind. Like, I want to say it's a story of within the Templars and also Skull and Bones, like to kind of bring it into, can't get away from Secret Society.
No, you just
about vampires, but
right.
yeah, in order for them, because some of them have been said, especially with the Templars, when they had the 13 drank out of a actual skull, like human blood. Maybe it was human, but a lot of the lore out there says that it's angelic. So it's like, where did they get that from? And that could be maybe a Watcher thing that happened when they came down, and they used the same exact skull and Skull and Bones also.
So you're saying like they're drinking angel blood? Or is that like the lore?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's one of them, right? And then all of a sudden they're immortal, right? That's part of the story and the lore behind it.
Very interesting.
And it very well may, allegedly be accurate.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting that you say that too, because it's very common in literature for the vampire curse to actually be shared not through biting, but through drinking the blood of the host vampire. So if you want to be turned, generally they do this through like seduction and other like manipulation, coercion, and you decide to join the coven, the family, and you do it willingly. They like slit their hand and like put it into a goblet, and then you drink it, and then you like basically die and then wake up a vampire. So like not every lore states that just being bitten will turn you, but that you actually have to kind of intentionally consume vampire blood. And it's just interesting because, like you say, this secret society that runs the world, known to participate in strange demonic rituals of blood consumption, potentially consuming angel blood, or in this case perhaps fallen angel blood, which could literally be the source of incredible power and even perhaps immortality if we're, so keen to believe it. Very interesting.
Except for their immortality is false. And,
yeah. Well, we know.
Ours is eternal.
We know for a fact that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and that no one comes to the Father but through him, and that it is his atonement that brings everlasting life. True immortality is a gift from God through Jesus, and it can't be claimed through the consumption of blood or the fountain of youth, as some might come to know it. So in that case, we know this is fraudulent, but that doesn't change the fact that it could still be a source of great power and devotion to evil forces through this ritual. So it's very interesting in that concept. And, with all of that, blood-related exchange and stuff, it makes me think that there's a reason why different vampire stories have different parameters for the condition, and it makes me think of the concept of phenotypes, which is that, obviously there are different types of viruses, different types of different types of parasites, and they produce different kinds of effects, whether it's in this case, like with this mini flare, it's creating tissue regeneration. Well, some parasites are very destructive and cause organ failure and stuff. So we know that there's different kinds, different effects that can be had because of parasites. I wonder if it's not possible that vampirism is not just a single type of a virus or parasite, but that there might be an entire family of different types of parasites that fall under the category of vampiric. Meaning that you could become a vampire in one version of literature that is actually a different viral strain or parasitic strain than another one in another story. So I always thought about it like, if you're a vampire in a storybook that burns, bursts into flames in front of a fire or in front of the sunlight, it's possible that there are other vampires who just sparkle in the sun like Twilight because of, what I mean? Because of that's what their strain is. And maybe that changes the effect too. Like, you look at like the OG vampires and they can like transform into bats and fly off, and they have no reflection in the mirror and all kinds of really almost, you could say, magic or spiritual principles. And then you see like what you were talking about with this book series about the Atlantean vampires who are actually operating in almost kind of a transhuman, technologically modified existence. It's very interesting to think about it that way, that there are different ways to become in general the same kind of monster.
Yeah, it's making me think about the 13 bloodlines in a whole different light right now. I'm not even gonna lie.
Bloodline families. Like, what's so significant about the 13 families, the bloodlines themselves, if the blood is not something more significant than just your family lineage, but that there's something in the blood they're trying to keep alive, a parasite family. Man, that's crazy. That's crazy.
When you started talking about the phenotypes, I was like, all right, let's go.
That makes sense, because obviously vampire families, right? It's very common in the lore for there to be, like a head vampire of every family, but that there's separate families that they work with each other and have treaties with one another. They usually have territory too, even where it's like these vampires live in this region and these live in another. They know each other, but they don't cross over. And this is all very popular in the lore. It's very interesting stuff. I sometimes encounter in vampire lore, books, movies, and shows, the idea that different vampire families have different vampire specialties. And I think that's even prevalent in the Twilight, that the different vampires have different kind of gifts or special skills that they get that are kind of to themselves. And to that same effect, there is a manga novel series that I started reading once about a year or so ago called My Vampire System. Interestingly enough, it also has this sort of technological integration into it, where the vampirism is kind of it's a body change, but that there's something like technological about it. And I never got far enough in to truly understand where it came from, but the long story short of it is that people have the ability to like take on special powers in this universe, and one of those special powers happens to be vampirism. So it's actually like a condition or a power, an ability as they call it. But in this particular world, the vampirism is kind of it's not the same as you would see in books and literature. It's, for instance, the sun aversion just causes weakness, but it doesn't cause you to burn until you become a more powerful vampire. So in this lore, when you first turn, you're like a halfling, half human, half vampire. But as the curse or the virus or the parasite continues to grow in your body and take more control and begin to alter you and evolve you even more, as you become a more powerful vampire, the same is said about your weaknesses. Like you become more of an aversion to the sun. It becomes more dangerous to get sunlight exposure and stuff. And it's just interesting how, you pick one, any of these lores or stories, they all seem to ring a very similar tune. And I don't think it's just because it's a cool and interesting concept, but I think it's like you said earlier, I think there's potentially some truth behind these stories after all.
I absolutely believe that. I really do. I don't know if you know about the Strigoi, which is it's like another term for a vampire, but to me they seem like a lot more darker and ugly, for lack of a better word. Like they really look like parasites, and I'm specifically referring to the TV show The Strain, which if you haven't watched it, don't. But
You're
if you
constantly
have,
telling people not, don't read this, don't watch it.
don't do what I did. Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't really fully awake, but it's everything happens for a reason, and I'm able to talk about parasitic vampires now, I guess, So it's
Yeah,
like,
it might
what do
sound a little
you do?
crazy. The cutting edge is
Yeah.
a little crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a tab here from the links that you sent me about the Strigoi in the show The Strain, and I know you said we shouldn't watch it, so I have not seen it.
Yeah.
I probably won't watch it unless it's really necessary. But obviously, we're
Man.
talking about it. I'll read the little summary here. It says in The Strain, the show The Strain, the Strigoi are a series of vampiric creatures controlled by a central telepathic hive mind led by the Master. This connection allows the Master to share sensory information and give instructions to individual Strigoi, while also allowing Strigoi to communicate with each other via telepathy. The hive mind can be disrupted by lead, and it is the connection that allows the Master to control the actions of the Strigoi, which would otherwise be simple, survival-driven monsters. So we have basically like a different variant of vampire lore where these are more like, they're not just like people with vampirism, but that they're like monsters. They're more actually like an evolved. In a lot of vampire lore, you get monsters out of vampires that haven't properly fed. So the longer they go without feeding, the more monstrous they become, ultimately turning into like a blood-crazed demon monster that hunts for the first thing it can get.
Yes. Not to cut you off, but in this series, it's a little bit different because we've got the master vampire and then we also have the ancients, right? And the master vampire that changes the other vampire, he has two different types of parasites, worms that come out of him that infect the other people. And so this is like where it gets insane because it links to scripture and it perverts and twists it, and I'm going to explain why. So just hear me out, okay? The white worm that comes out of them that go into other people, they can get infected just by it dropping into their eye, and it gets into their eye. An open wound, nose, mouth, it doesn't matter. And those are the ones that are the Strigoi that are really like super demonic through the whole thing, okay? But then the master vampire can actually secrete what's called the crimson worm. And
Interesting.
there's
a description here, right here. Let's open it up.
Yeah, and so the crimson worm, when it goes into a host, it lets the host be more human. And what happens with these is the master vampire speaks through these people. It's not just telepathy or anything, but it is an actual taking over of the host, like a full-on parasite demonic possession invasion. But this is where they're twisting what there's like such a beautiful biblical reference to this. And there's a verse where Jesus says that he is but a worm, right? And when you go look up the crimson worm and what it actually is in nature, it's so hard for me to tell this story without crying. So I'm going to do my best because it's like fantastic. This red crimson worm goes on this particular type of tree and it has babies, right? And what happened, they used to use this. So, okay, it has babies and the mom goes over it and creates a protective shell over the baby. And so after they're born, the shell that's over the mom basically bleeds over onto the children, and that's how they turn red. So it's representing Jesus shedding his blood for us and washing us clean. And this is the same crimson worm, and the stain, the ink that comes out of it is what they also used to color garments with back in biblical times.
You see that here, yeah.
Yeah. So it's an amazing story, and if nobody's actually ever really looked into the crimson worm, I highly recommend you go and read the story about it.
So basically, there's this, right, what you're saying is there's this real worm Lives on oak trees in the Middle East and Mediterranean. Interesting for where it is in the world location. An area that would be the place that Jesus was living and stuff during the time here. So he would be familiar with the species. He was a very educated man. And so he sees, and people knew about this even then. They knew that this was a thing that nature was doing, this crimson worm, like releasing the dye and you know. And then you can see that has gone on, right? They've used it for centuries to create a brilliant red dye for valuable textiles, including those in the ancient Jewish tabernacle and the high priest's garments. So it's directly connected there. But then the worm's life cycle has been interpreted as a powerful symbol of sacrifice, mirroring the Christian belief in the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. The crimson dye represents his blood, and the white wax that falls from the body after 3 days symbolizes purity and resurrection. Interesting. The waxy material from the dead worm has also been used to create high-quality shellac used in the Middle East as a wood preserver. Yep. Very interesting. Yeah. So you have this crimson worm in real life, and then in the story, in the show, they say, other than different color, what sets these worms apart from the lesser strain worms is the very essence of the 7 ancients, carrying the ancients' very soul. They are very well their true form within a humanoid husk. In addition to producing lesser bloodworms and carrying its host's very soul, Crimson Worm enables its host to control lesser vampires via telepathic link, establishing a hive mind among themselves with it, means to keep the latter from causing unintended damages. Said telepathic link can be blocked with lead, however. Okay, it's a very interesting concept. Okay, but isn't that funny? Because right at the beginning here, we talked about the idea of these parasites like the toxoplasmosis, or in the case of the vampirism strain, that it's something that wants to expand itself, to proliferate itself, and that it works in kind of a hive mind, somehow being able to communicate with itself, even though it's not directly connected. And that's a very interesting concept, which leads me to believe that that kind of a science is playing into this whole vampire system, right? So in one way, you have a host vampire who I guess say would be similar to like one of these 7 ancients, you know. It's like one of these characters who is the main source of the spread. And then they go on and create, you know, sub thralls or additional vampires using, you know, lesser bloodworms, and expand the viruses or the parasites' influence and impact. It's very much like what you would see in any other parasitic or viral circumstance. But in this case, the hosts are being controlled or motivated to go out and advance the worm's purpose to expand itself and continue to find more hosts and stuff. That's a very crazy concept. And again, another reverberation of a similar theme that seems to be existing in all of these stories. Very interesting to me.
Yeah, I just want to make another connection and point out really quick that the Hokey Pokey, they found parasites and nanotech in it.
That's true.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, like the graphene antennas. Like, I know you're not supposed to talk about that stuff, but a lot of people are wondering, what is that black goo, right? The graphene electromagnetically manipulated through RF. You know, there's a giant field of 5G towers everywhere, like emitting 5G excellent cell service connection that everybody loves. Good Wi-Fi data download. Yep. But what data are you downloading? You know what really freaks me out, and I don't know if it's true or not, and I'll probably get the channel ban to bring it up, but do you remember back in the day when people were first getting those injections, and then people were having like Bluetooth receivers? And stuff was like magnetizing to their arm. And there was there was crazy stuff happening.
Speaking of the Bluetooth receivers, I actually did like a little test of my own. I don't have the pictures anymore. I may have screenshots somewhere, but I did run the Bluetooth thing and saw all these different like MAC addresses coming up in a place that I know had tons of people injected.
Yeah, that's crazy. I would not be surprised.
It's real.
You know, we've seen so much of an advancement in AI surveillance and even laws on the books advancing that talk about surveillance spy networks and the ability to do things. You know, we saw just the other night on the Ceiling Fan Man show how he was showing that they can basically take a cluster of pixels from a live camera and use that small cluster of pixels to track the source of the camera all the way to the place in the world where the camera is positioned and what it's viewing. And it's like the amount of technology and spy apparatus has come so far that the idea of being chipped and tracked used to be kind of an amazing and crazy idea, some 1984 dystopia. But, when you look at it nowadays with how far things have really gone, I think somebody said 1984 was a brochure of what was really to come. And that what we have now is a far more advanced final product. Very interesting. And what's more even is that now everyone who potentially has this black goo graphene antenna could very well be infected with the same kind of proverbial lesser bloodworms, just waiting for that telepathic link to be turned on. That's a scary thought. It's funny because, the people who weren't injected go around calling themselves purebloods. It's like a known thing. And it makes you wonder if there's not some truth to that. Obviously, there's a lot of people that have a problem with that, but it's just something to think about, something to consider. Yeah.
There's nothing that Jesus can't save, though.
Oh, of course. I mean, I always bring this up, and it kind of bothers people, but, St. Christopher is a dogman giant. And he's called Saint Christopher. So, how did a dogman giant become a saint unless there is redemption for much more than we think? The power of Christ can go quite far. I think he could totally cure something like vampirism. The question is, are you repentant and willing to give up your wretchedness? Who knows? And for these families, I imagine that's not the case, right? If we're talking about ancient bloodlines, preserving the worm, so to speak, if that's what they're doing, if that's what they're working towards, then it makes sense that they're totally unrepentant and have no interest in changing at all.
Yeah, this is kind of why I say that the deletes are not lizards, but they're actually strigoi. They're vampires.
It's very interesting. We talk about reptilians a lot in the sort of conspiracy theory world, about the world's being run by reptilians. And I actually did some research earlier on, a lot of people talk about Vlad the Impaler. He's the original Dracula. And a lot of people, there's some lore and literature about him potentially being a vampire, but for the most part, he's kind of he's not really the inspiration for the lore of vampires, mostly just the name, but there's more about it than that. He's not the first Dracula. He's actually the third Dracula. So his father and grandfather are both Dracula, and the name actually comes from dragon, Draco. And so his father, Vlad II, I think is his name, he was actually called the Dragon. And so that's why the name Dracula exists in the family name. And it's interesting, right, that Draco is dragon, right? Because we talk about reptilians, we talk about the idea of reptilian, serpentine family bloodlines and DNA. And it's, very possible that what we are calling reptilians may actually just be vampires with not reptile DNA, but with dragon DNA. It's a very interesting concept. And it's interesting also because all of that stuff, the events and lives and times of Vlad the Impaler take place in Wallachia or whatever that country's called, which is basically just to the south of Hungary, southeast of Transylvania. The places where the vampire lore in history comes from is right there in that part of the world. And so it's very interesting that we have not only a guy with the last name, the Dragon, he's of the dragon. He's the son of the dragon is actually what Vlad the Impaler's actual name is, the son of the dragon. You're like, man, if somebody is reptilian or a serpentine in some way, the way you would be that is by being the son of the dragon, and history, as we know, is a very strange and weird set of lies that are agreed upon. And you look at the stories of that region of the world during that time, the 1400s and all the stuff going on, and it's just as easily complete fiction. That there could be a lot more terrible things taking place in the world in that time in history that have later been attributed to the wars of various factions and feudal arguments over land and things. But what could actually be going on is something much more sinister, the proliferation of an evil bloodline all the way back then. I think about that a lot.
Yeah.
In the vampire system lore, The vampires knew that they would one day outnumber the humans and or hunt the humans out of existence, and the same problem that was being faced by these Atlantean vampires in that novel series you were discussing earlier is seemingly prevalent in a lot of vampire stories. Just like in the Daywalker story, they were having blood scarcity, and obviously in many of the other vampire lores, it's an issue when a vampire starts feeding on people because the leadership of the human civilizations catch wind of it and start hunting for the vampires to get rid of them. So vampires don't want to be hunted. They're trying to, sustain the worm, so to speak. It makes sense that they would be looking for a blood substitute. And that is a very common theme in the Daybreakers movie. They're actually trying to use a laboratory technology, right, to create it. And in the Vampire System novel series, they actually create their own version of humanoid reptiles called the Dalki. And the reason they make them is because they want to be able to mass produce a race that could be used as a blood harvesting race for the purpose of sustaining themselves. And it's just very interesting that they just so happen to be reptilians. So maybe it's possible that the elites of the world are not just a ruling bloodline of vampire elites, but that they also have within their hierarchy a race of half reptilian humanoids whom they have in history used as kind of a blood substitute for humans. And if they had such a blood substitute, it makes sense that they would be able to sustain themselves through what could be a prolonged time underground while they hid from the influence of, say, like 1,000-year kingdom or something like that. They could survive by eating the reptiles, survive off of the reptile blood, and then maybe in the future, say that the direct influence of 1,000-year kingdom was not there anymore, then turning to consuming humans again would be like getting access to a long forgotten or a highly rare and valuable commodity that they've long since been over the need for, but yet have a great desire for, and the cost, right? You see a lot of this, like you said earlier, about the idea of blood harvesting or, we'll just say it, adrenochrome and stuff. It makes you wonder if the reason they're after that is because it's not that they need it to survive, but they want it because it's better, right? Just something to think about, right?
Yeah.
Real
Definitely.
human blood. What would real human blood catch? Like, what would it go for in a world of elite ruling blood vampires? Like, they would definitely be in the interest of harvesting people for many reasons. But primarily,
Human farm.
yes, human farm. Well, and then you wonder, right? Because here we are on said human farm being farmed for our resources, our energy, right? We talk about energy vampires and how the elites of the world at the very least have monetized our time and energy, and they harvest it from us through taxation and fines and bills and an ever-inflating economy. And it makes you wonder if the real thing they're after is not just your energy, but it's what happens when people are in the slave farm. There's all kinds of new generations of people that they can take from, and they can cull the herd at will and create all kinds of ways that they can manipulate us. I see in my mind images from that movie Daybreakers where there's people hooked up to the machines like in the Matrix being harvested for their blood, and it seems like even if all we were looking at was a spiritual manifestation of this, it is 100% real in the world we live in today.
Yeah, I actually came across a video like a few years ago that I've tried to share. And crazy enough, I took a screen recording of this video like probably 4 different times. And I can tell you that it has disappeared off of my phone and I didn't delete it. It's just being removed. And it was, I know the channel and everything that you can go to, it's still up on their channel, but it's a government underground facility. So they say, allegedly, right? And their bodies like hanging on meat hooks, basically. And so in that movie where they're cutting them and draining off of the neck, in this particular video, all of these bodies actually still have that same cut on them. And for some reason, this particular channel is able to still have it up on their channel without any issues. So I don't know if you want to tempt fate,
I
but
mean, I don't know if I'll do it on this, but we could find
yeah,
it and share it with people in the future for sure. And of course, I will
yeah,
share. This is an image of the type of circumstance that we're looking at. I don't know if we're gonna
hmm
get a close up on it, but you see people hooked to the rigs like this, and in the movie they show a close up, and the neck collar actually has a needle going into their neck, like a blood draw
hmm
from their throat. There's not
the
gonna be.
video that I've seen is almost exactly like that, except for they don't have the halos around their head.
Oh yeah,
So
like the rings on like this. Well,
yeah,
what's interesting
hmm
is like I know the video you're talking about because you've sent it to me before, and
yeah,
those people in the meat locker hanging on hooks almost look like they're expired. Like it's
yeah,
in the movie, you have because of the scarcity, the value of these, like as they would refer to them in the movie as like cattle. These are independently owned by someone separate than the company that has them all hosted here. And so what happens is throughout the movie, more and more of these are disappearing, either because they're expiring from being drained too hard to keep up with the demand, or they get drained eventually and die no matter what, which is part of it. But also because there are private investors who own these people, these animals in this context, and they take them away from the factory to keep in their own personal supply. And it's just really scary to think that if that meat locker is real, those could have been sedated people, or they could have just been
hmm
expired. They look just like this
right,
too, blue, gray colored. Like that's so
yep,
creepy. And the blood hole on their neck is in the same spot as in this
it's
movie.
yep,
It's so scary.
yeah, it's so I don't know. I get such that awful uneasy feeling in my gut with it. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, it's awful, but
Still, although I don't
ooh,
recommend watching anything evil, the Daybreakers movie is really cool, and I
yeah,
did always love the fact that Willem Dafoe, accidentally, by getting ejected out of his car, learns that the cure for vampirism is what destroys vampires. That you
right,
need the light, that purifying light in the correct dosage is, it's the actual cure for the disease. And not only is it a cure for the wretchedness inside you, but then once you have it in you, you then become a conduit for that light, which drives out the cells in anybody who even tries to come after you and bite you. Anyone who comes in contact with your new purified blood, purified by the light, now they run the risk of being purified too by that same divine light that you are now channeling. Almost like you went from being a hive mind telepathic slave to a dark evil parasite, a dragon bloodline parasite, and then you're free from that, and now you are a conduit of light and purity and goodness in the world. And that's very much like a kind of a paraphrase to the great war that we're in right now for the state of the world and for all human souls, right?
yeah,
It's a very interesting concept, to say the least. Lots of
hmm
secrets, lots of mysteries there, and I think that vampirism in general is probably something more than we think. It's not just people being turned, but that there must be an entire encyclopedia of variant, different types of this same sort of, angel blood, fallen angel blood, and
hmm
how it manifests in the future offspring who have it in them. And either
yep,
the vampire elites that run the world, or even potentially reptilians working in coordination, they could all be real and would all be derived from that same dragon bloodline lineage, that Dracula, where it all stems
hmm
from in the very beginning.
yeah. You know what I find really fascinating too is if we're going on the parasite aspect of it, right? Um, in vampire lore, right? Most of them, almost all of them, they have an aversion to garlic.
Oh,
And garlic
yeah.
is a natural known anti-parasitic and cleanser. So it's just really fascinating that link put together, doing this research for this.
That is
Um,
crazy.
yeah, yeah. So
Let's look at it. Let's read
it's
it really quick.
all right, let's go.
It says garlic as an anti-parasitic agent. Garlic, Allium sativum, interesting, has been traditionally used as an anti-parasitic agent in various cultures. While scientific evidence supporting its efficacy is limited, some studies suggest that garlic may possess anti-parasitic properties. Garlic contains sulfur-containing compounds such as allicin, agoni, and diallyl sulfide. I don't know if I got that right, but which are believed to have anti-parasitic effects. The exact mechanism by which garlic exerts its anti-parasitic activity is not fully understood. However, studies have shown that these compounds can injure and kill parasites, inhibit their growth and reproduction, and alter their metabolism. So it makes sense that if vampires are a parasitic race of bloodworms, they would be afraid of something that contains, interestingly enough, sulfur, which is, generally in most lore and literature attributed to hell. Like sulfur is like the fire of God or whatever, like coming to purify the Sodom and Gomorrah burned to the ground by sulfur fire of the Lord and stuff. It's just very interesting. The purifying flame, the light, is again another paraphrase, another way of saying the same thing. And in this case,
what's even more interesting. Sorry,
no, you're good. Go ahead.
In the medical field, also antibiotics that are made with sulfur, I can't tell you how many people are actually allergic to it. And it just makes one think, how many parasites do they actually have in their body that they're so allergic to sulfur that they break out in hives or have like such an extreme reaction that it can make them go into anaphylactic shock.
That is crazy. So it's almost like their cell structure, just like with the little nanobots, they're so fully saturated by the cells, the parasitic cells, or even cells that were built to evolve their form by the parasites. Those cells don't like anti-parasitic agents such as sulfur. And so they're breaking out in hives and stuff, and what's happening is the parasites are attacking the body so that you won't take the poison, which is their poison. It's the cure for you. It's interesting too, because how many times have you seen this, whether it was real or fake? I know a lot of times it's real, where people are brought in to a church or into the presence of people of God who are under the influence or even direct possession of Satan. And when the Lord is like invoked upon them, the Holy Spirit is brought into the equation, these people thrash around and scream and fight. And it's very common. And in a way, that's kind of like the emotional version of hives. You're like breaking out in a reaction from this purifying element that's trying to enter you. It's a very interesting concept, like almost as if we take things into our body that are bad for these parasites, and the negative, inflammatory or otherwise, almost deadly reaction that we get from it is the body itself reacting to this compound that could very well be damaging to the worm that is running our bodies. Crazy.
It's like having the parasite too, part of the whole hive mind concept. The parasite takes control of the host, and like Paul brings up, it makes you eat and drink and the thing that you shouldn't be doing, right? And it's like a natural possession within the body for somebody to like crave that sugar, crave whatever, take those drugs. It's all part of their little hive mind unit that they have going on within the body.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I actually think that now would be a great time for us to transition to the next part of this, which is discussions on some of these figures from old who are still around. And I think a first one to throw out there, which you don't have a ton of research on, but the concept of the Count of Saint Germain. And it's interesting because they call him the Count, right? He's the Count of Saint Germain. The Count of Khan. Anyway, and so it's like funny because Count Dracula, is the vampire host overlord, right? He's the one who is the master vampire who infects everybody subsequently in his story. Is it possible that the Count of Saint Germain is another one of these counts of a certain blood type that no one ever sees eat or drink anything except tea or something? It makes you wonder if what he's eating and drinking is not food, but that he may very well be an undead vampire. Anyway, just thought that, people have theorized that the Count of Saint Germain was a vampire, and maybe it's possible that the reason he's seen in all these times and why he's so smart and why he's so smooth and everything is literally because he is one of these ancient ones, so to speak, carrying perhaps fallen angel DNA or even being possessed by some kind of a parasitic satanic worm that allows him to live well beyond his years. Very interesting.
Or he's a fallen one himself.
Yeah, or he could be one of those two. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we have
That's kind of like where I lean.
Oh yeah, I think either one could be possible. I mean, obviously, the vampire sounds like, being that it's derived from the Draco, the dragon, that it could very well be that vampires are just the offspring, in a sense. That vampires are like a new kind of post-flood Nephilim race that are born from the blood of fallen angels.
Right.
Dragons in this case.
But the dragons are seraphim, so
Yeah, that's what I mean. Right, that's the dragon. we're
fiery
talking-
serpent dragon.
Uh-huh. Very interesting. Well, I started pulling it up a second ago. There was some stuff about exhuming the Pope. So why don't we?
Yeah.
Why don't we dig
Before
in?
we get there, though, we need to talk about vampire burials and the cadaver synod, because that's going to lead us like into the undead Pope.
Definitely. yeah.
Yeah.
The undead
Yes.
Pope. Okay, so what do you know about vampire funerals and vampire burials? What do you know about that?
So I do know out here in Arizona, I want to say it was like 2010 or something like that. But I know it was like super recent. They actually found like a 10-year-old girl who was buried with a rock in their mouth. And it made me start searching, why did this happen? It was considered a vampire burial, right? And so after the vampires have been killed, basically the preventative measures would be to prevent the corpse from rising again as like a Strigoi vampire, whatever. They do a staking. They put knitting needles that were poked through the eyes. A stake was driven through the chest. And then a lot of times there was garlic placed in the mouth. Or in some cases, a brick or a rock was used.
You can see some of these where they've got like a sickle so that the vampire couldn't rise without like decapitating itself in some of these cases too. Very interesting.
Yeah.
You see them where they've got a brick in their mouth. There's one here that's buried. You can see a rock shoved into their mouth, like just to make sure that it doesn't escape. That's very interesting.
And so back in, especially in Romania, they would do this, but the graves were opened several years after the burial to check for signs of vampirism. Like if the body was not decomposing or if there was blood around the mouth. In these cases, they would, take the whatever precautions they could to, get rid of the vampire, kill the vampire or whatever.
Yeah.
So that led me into this research, and it led me into what is the cadaver synod. And so I started reading about that. And what's crazy about this whole thing is also the time period that it happened. And I'm laughing because it's like a little bit uncomfortable and it's absolutely absurd, but this really happened. They exhumed a dead pope to put it on trial. And of course, he was found guilty. He couldn't defend himself.
Yeah,
it's like so absurd, but it's like really. But they basically took away his papacy status and all. There was like so much more to read on that, but
we'll pull up and read about it. But before we get into it, let me say it is interesting, especially when we were looking at the. The vampire burials and this stuff. A lot of these are in places like Hungary and Poland and the exact places where Vlad the Impaler was ruling and reigning during his time. And those events, Transylvania and these areas that vampire lore and literature is originating is also the place where, of course, culturally, you have people taking this lore and literature and going, I guess you could say, the next step with it, and to the point that they're actually like, acting out these ritualistic burial procedures, whether superstitious or otherwise, it's real, and that's what they're doing, right? And then obviously we progress to this cadaver synod thing, which is like what you said. It's we'll read it. The cadaver synod, also called the cadaver trial, synodus horrenda, very horrendous, is the name given to the ecclesiastical trial of Pope Formosus, who had been dead for 9 months, in the Basilica of St. John Lateran in Rome during January 897. The trial was conducted by Pope Stephen VI, the successor to Formosus' successor, Pope Boniface VI. Stephen had Formosus' corpse exhumed and brought to the papal court for judgment. He accused Formosus of perjury, of having acceded to the papacy illegally, and illegally presiding over more than one diocese at the same time. At the end of the trial, Formosus was pronounced guilty, and his papacy was retroactively declared null. The Cadaver Synod and its related events took place during a period of political instability in Italy. This period lasted from the middle of the 9th century to the middle of the 10th century and was marked by a rapid succession of pontiffs. Between 872 and 965, 24 popes were appointed, and between 896 and 904, there was on average a new pope every year. Often these brief papal reigns were the result of political machinations in the local Roman factions, about which few sources survive. Formosus became Bishop of Porto Santa Rufina in 864 during the pontificate of Pope Nicholas I. In 866, he was sent as a legate to Bulgaria, which is over there right by good buddy Vlad. And it was so successful in this position that the Bulgarian ruler Boris I asked the Pope to appoint him Archbishop of Bulgaria. So this goes on for a long time, and this basically ties into all of it. And I think that if we're not mistaken, somewhere in here, it talks about how when they dug him up, oh, here we go. So this is the actual process right here. So in January 897, Stephen VI ordered that the corpse of his predecessor Formosus be removed from its tomb and brought to the papal court for judgment. With the corpse propped up on a throne, a deacon was appointed to answer for the deceased pontiff. Formosus was accused of transmigrating seas in violation of canon law, of perjury, and of serving as a bishop while actually a layman. According to Liutprand, Stephen VI said, "When you were a bishop of Porto, why did you usurp the universal Roman see in such a spirit of ambition?" Eventually, the corpse was found guilty. Being stripped of its papal vestments, Stephen then cut off the 3 fingers of the right hand that it had used in life for blessings, next formally invalidating all of Formosus' acts and ordinations, including this ordination of Stephen VI as Bishop of Anagni, whatever. The body was finally interred in the graveyard for foreigners, only to be dug up once again, tied to weights, and cast into the Tiber River. Very weird. This macabre spectacle.
Sleeping with the fishes.
Yeah. This macabre spectacle turned public opinion on Rome against Stephen. Formosus' body washed up on the banks of the Tiber, and rumor had it that this waterlogged, rotting corpse was still performing miracles. A public uprising deposed and imprisoned Stephen. He was strangled in prison in July or August 897. In December of that year, Pope Theodore II convened a synod that annulled the Cadaver Synod, rehabilitated Formosus, and ordered that his body, which had been recovered from the Tiber, be buried in St. Peter's Basilica in pontifical vestments. That's very interesting. So a guy that was 9 months dead was dug up, charged with a crime, buried again, dug up again, thrown in a river, then washed up on the river, and then they buried him again somehow. What were you even burying at that point? Was it just a skeleton? Like, what's left of that guy? They prohibited the future trial of any corpse here after this. A very interesting concept, though, just in general.
In general, but here's the thing, though, and this leads into the next pope I want to look at. But they depict a picture of him actually being like completely dead, decrepit, or whatever.
Right. They show here in this kind of art piece. I wonder. Oh yes, beautiful. Let's look at this in a.
But what if that's not what he really looked like? What if he was more preserved?
Yeah, I mean, this is an art piece, so we don't really know. We can't really know.
Yeah.
But so, what gives you the impression that he was in better condition than like a skeleton in robes?
Because they're always finding popes being really well preserved. And it's part of the process that they exhume these popes after they've died after a certain amount of time. I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason. I didn't get that far into it, but I'm just like, why are you digging up dead bodies? Well, this is weird to me.
Yeah, we have a search about it here. It says, obviously we looked up why do they exhume the popes. It says popes are exhumed primarily for the canonization process for sainthood and to move their bodies to more accessible locations for public veneration. The exhumation allows for identification and inspections of the remains, which are sometimes displayed in glass coffins as relics for pilgrims to see, as with Pope John the 23rd and Pope John Paul II. Very interesting. This guy died in 1963, Pope John the 13th or 23rd. Isn't this the guy that they dug up in the...
So, they exhumed this guy, and they found him very well preserved. And it was more than 9 years later.
Here we go.
They exhumed him in 2001, it says that they did.
Yeah, when did he die? He died in...
Long
oh my gosh, he was born in 1881.
Yeah.
And then he died in 1963. So he had been buried for 45 years, 46 years or something like that. So over 40 years in the ground. Pope John the 23rd was exhumed in January 2001, interesting year, for his beatification, which is a step towards sainthood. So his body was remarkably well preserved due to a combination of being sealed in a lead-lined triple coffin and a secret preservative treatment. Interesting. I wonder what that could be. Something in the blood, maybe?
Something, and the fact that they had this so long ago too is amazing to me, because there's even older popes that they've exhumed and were found in really good condition also.
That's crazy.
But this is the most famous one because it's the most recent one, I think.
Yeah.
And not only that, I heard this information about this pope before 2020, maybe around that time. And so I went digging for it, right? And there was a portion of time where they had this pope on display in St. Peter's Basilica, just like they do now, with a live webcam on it for 24/7. But I cannot find that footage anywhere. It's been scrubbed, and they say that it doesn't. I saw it with my own eyes. I know it was there because I used to go on.
This is it right here, isn't it?
That's the
him,
picture of him. Yeah, but there's no live feed.
They don't have the live stream right now anymore. Nope, obviously,
they took it down.
Yeah, they knew we were coming.
All. Yep.
Yeah, but here's a picture to show you. This was really happening, and I know it's true. There was a camera pointed at this that was always on, so you could see it. And it's hard to tell, even in this picture. That man is got skin on him and stuff. That man is still intact, and he was buried for 37 years, they say.
They had the cameras on him. It makes me just wonder, what were they waiting on? That's all that goes through my mind. What are they watching for?
I would tell you that the first thing that comes to my mind, if we're going to try and imply that the Pope might be a vampire, the first thing that comes to my mind is eternal rest or the long sleep. They go into these eternal slumber where they're not really dead. They're just in a stasis. They freeze and stop moving until they're awoken for a purpose. There's reasons in vampire lore why you would wake up an ancient sleeping vampire. But in this instance, it's
Wonderworld.
Yeah, exactly. So it's we don't really know why they dug him up or moved him around or where he was really buried to begin with. But what we do know is that this man was dead for 40 years and his body looks extremely well preserved. It almost makes me wonder if he's not even dead at all. That he might be.
I think
he
he's
might
sleeping.
be undead. It's interesting. So we had Pope John the 23rd, and then we also have Pope John Paul II. Which is, when's he born? 1920 to 2005. When was he exhumed? April 29, 2011. Oh, so this guy's even more recent. For his beatification, he was moved to a tomb in the grotto of St. Peter's Basilica to a spot in front of the high altar for public veneration, which took place May 1st, 2011. So does that mean that you could... Oh, shoot. There's a YouTube video.
Is it May 1st, May Day?
It is. Is this... This is just crazy. Look at that. Look at that guy.
Supposedly they're covered in wax too, but that's not the point.
He does kind of look like he's waxy, but I'm not saying that. That's just to keep him from getting dirty, dusty. You know, it's to make him have a shine to him and stuff. But I'm talking about the consistency of the fact that Have you ever seen somebody get frostbite and their like nose and ears fall off? Like
Yeah.
the first part of your body to decompose is your extremities, fingertips, nose,
Yep.
ears, and stuff. And the fact that he's here, how is his nose? How is he so? I mean, maybe they painted him, whatever. But the fact that the meat is still intact. What did they embalm this guy with? That he's been dead for 20 years. The other guy, what's his John Paul this other guy. Look, he also looks just that good. Like why does he look so good? What is this?
That's what I said when I stumbled upon this back in 2020. I was like,
So
what is
creepy.
going on? Mhm.
It's like this ancient order of vampires running the Vatican.
Look, let me just point something out in that other picture where you can see the hat really good, the Dagon hat, right? Which is also another variation of a dragon. I know that they say that it's a fish god, but I'm gonna say probably not. But I know what it says, but the root word, that's like a whole nother thing to get into. But this is also how the pharaohs were buried. He's got the same type of hat that a pharaoh does.
Yeah. So it's like the same ancient bloodline operating in a different faction, different country. Well, and obviously we've talked about this in the past, but the idea of the empires of Satan throughout history, Babylon, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greeks, the Romans, and then ultimately whatever the beast system that persists to this day in the form of secret societies running the West using the United States as their machine. It stands to reason that it's the same evil people operating the same evil organization that they always have, and it would make even more sense that they're not just from a bloodline family because they're related to each other, but that there's something in the blood that they seek to preserve. And I think that it makes a lot of sense that it's not just family ties, but that it's actually these worms or some kind of an equivalent to this parasitic, demonic, vampiric. It's a species that lives inside the body, where it's like we look at Nephilim or fallen manipulated creatures. The Bible says that these angels sinned against the plants and the animals and things, creating monsters and stuff. It's possible that there are monsters in the world today that we regard as normal, that they're just here because they are a part of the regular realm. But then you look at something like fleas and mosquitoes and parasites like that, and you wonder, what purpose would the Lord have for those things? And it isn't to say that Satan has created something as much as he's just manipulated something that was already here. And the fallen angels come and sin against man. Did they create a new race, or is the Nephilim just an alteration of human DNA, a modification, a manipulation, so to speak, like what he does with ideas, concepts, and theories? Satan changes something in your perspective, or he changes something in the way something is presented, but he's never actually created something all new. So I wonder if it's not the same thing. Fleas, mosquitoes, and other parasitic entities could very well have a Nephilitic, satanic origin, and they could even exist in the form of viruses, bacteria, cellular level things that can actually infect your body. In the same way that you can become spiritually possessed by these entities from another realm, it's possible that you can become physically possessed by these entities through their own proliferation of their hive mind cell structure. And that is super scary to think about.
Yeah. I love talking about the chimeric aspect of it too, because like, what if these parasites that are being passed down into their bloodline and their family, right? They don't take on the guise of vampirism because something went wrong, and then this is where we get our cryptids and stuff from, right?
Yeah.
Just a theory, But,
yeah. Well, you think about like a Wendigo, that could very well be one of these like unfed vampire monsters, like it just has not had blood in a while, or is one of these intentional like strigoi creatures that's supposed to look like that. It's supposed to have mutated to that point from the cellular manipulation of the parasite. That, you get infected, and over time, I've even heard about people becoming Wendigos. It's part of the lore of Wendigos is that they're people who get a curse somehow, and they become this monster. Or the same with like any other shapeshifter, like a werewolf or any other kind of
Skinwalker.
Yeah, like skinwalkers and werewolves. It's all like, it begins with an infection of some kind, a curse of some kind, which manifests into a full-blown modification of the physical entity that you are. You know, like what's a Mothman? What's a Bigfoot? What are these things? For all we know, these are different manifestations of the same kind of a genetic, a DNA or blood disease that has turned you into something monstrous. And of course, it would be carried in the blood. You were born of a certain race, of a certain creature of the dark. And because of that, you manifest with those traits and with those things. And it would stand to reason that the ruling class, being the direct descendants of Draco, of reptilian, serpentine, seraphim, fallen angels perhaps, would seek to preserve that bloodline for as long as possible. Obviously with their goal to have dominion over the earth, right? To usurp the realm from God's people.
It just reminds me of the verse, the life is in the blood.
Oh, yeah. Or the death in this case. Very creepy stuff, these undead popes here. The cadaver synod, whatever.
Yeah.
Very creepy just to think about that this is not a secret. They've been digging these guys up for some reason and even putting them on display, and people just don't really seem to talk about it much. I think our baseline conclusion is probably true. It is possible, although not something you could guarantee, but it is possible that this guy's still up, and that it's not that he's alive or that he's dead, but that he is in fact undead. Crazy.
It's still there too. He's on. There are several actual popes like on display within St. Peter's Basilica in several different areas. And then of course we know that underground in the grotto, there's tons of them that are buried in tombs underneath there as well. It just kind of makes me look at the catacombs kind of in a different light also. You know, I've always said that these were the bodies of the people that, came out of the millennial kingdom, right? Whether they were destroyed via the enemy or natural causes, right? But I think it's like all interconnected in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, imagine if those catacombs, if these old basilicas and stuff were inhabited by, in the post-millennial time, the resurgent races of these monsters that come up from their underground caves. They seize control of the empty, vacant cities to a point, and then they're dwelling like some Nosferatu, phantom dwelling in the rafters of some Quasimodo type. You know what I mean? And they're eating people, they're killing people, like they're Jack the Ripper. You know what I mean? They're consuming people, and then they're stacking their bodies up in the catacombs beneath the thing, because that's like where they came from. They live in those underground catacombs. I'll bet you there was a transitory period where, as the wane of the rain was taking place, these monsters became more and more confident to come up from their underground hiding places and start to, commit acts against the surviving classes of people in the world. And that would totally justify why they had all those bodies, because they'd been coming to the surface, capturing people, eating them, and then storing their bodies in the underground for probably decades, if not centuries, before things changed into the more modern version of the control scheme we have now.
It makes me think of the underground Nephilim horde.
Yeah, right? Like that we talk about and we see in so much, right? Like it's Gears of War, there's an underground locust horde, and in various literatures, this... there's so much Native American lore that talks about how they lived with their ancestors underground and that their ancestors actually brought them up to the surface. And these kinds of stories exist in India as well, different parts of the world where ancient groups tell oral tradition histories of the fact that they used to dwell with their Nephilim ancestors, the giants and other monsters and such that they deify in statues and stuff. And they say that they lived underground with them, and then they were brought up to the surface once, sometime in the history of things. And I can imagine that would be the perfect timing, right? Right at the end of the official power structure of this millennial reign, with the release of Satan, the commencement of the release of Satan, that all these monsters and bloodline entities would find it a good time to now come to the surface to reclaim control of the surface world. And that probably led to many subsequent conflicts that ultimately probably had them decide that it was better that they hide in plain sight rather than try to assert some sort of like warfare dominance over humanity. Almost like it's better if we all think that we're free while being their slaves rather than them openly warring against us and eating us. And of course, we know that they are disappearing people. We know that they're doing a lot of deliberate acts to control us and destroy us, very much par for the course of an evil, satanic, multi-generational cult. So with all that, you know, Epstein Island and human trafficking and everything else they do, it seems rather par for the course that they would in fact be like monsters and that they are in fact farming us for those evil, sinister purposes.
Yeah, they're trying to make, even with the lines that go in the sky that seem to be missing in a lot of places these days, but they're like terraforming Earth to suit their needs. And like when you started talking about the like the ticks, the mosquitoes, all of these like blood sucking, creepy crawlies and all of that, that I don't believe, are originally from Father. They are adapted and changed to something else. It makes me also believe that vegetation, like certain plants and stuff that are poisonous, I don't think those existed before that,
Yeah.
And so it's certain areas are more profound with those types of things, poison ivy, poison oak, and all of that, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, and those are found in the woods and in the forest. And a lot of lore is, vampires, they hunt in the woods and in the forest. And then you also have your Hunger Games that they play, the deletes do with certain people that they capture and they're running for you know what I'm saying?
The most dangerous game, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
actually talk about doing this in the Black Forest I think that's in Germany, that there's a history of stories of people being pursued as a human hunt in the Black Forest in Germany. And I find that interesting because, hunting for people is literally the baseline lore of vampirism. People being hunted by other humanoid creatures for sport.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it makes you think that obviously at this point they don't have to hunt us for survival because they have found a way to replicate or supply the blood they need. And again, I think it ties into more of that reptilian stuff. I think people believe that a reptilian race exists. I think that's on par with what people are tracking these days. It makes me wonder if there isn't a sort of like a lesser, not the same, like they're not of the direct bloodline of the master vampire, right? The dragon, Dracula. But that these might be a genetically modified through technology version of humanity, like a humanoid reptilian hybrid, as they call them, partially
Or it's
human.
a different kind of parasite.
Yeah, maybe it is another type of this descendant parasite from fallen entities. It totally is possible, probable, and even likely, if you ask me. Very scary stuff. We are living in a very strange time, Wendy. I wanted to look a little bit at the extant papal tombs. PayPal. The PayPal
let's
tombs.
go.
It's just talking about how it says there's 100 papal tombs that are at least partially extant, representing fewer than less than half of the 266 deceased popes. So what it's basically saying is they have 100 grave sites that still exist, but more than half of these popes, they don't have their... Yeah, so they're going to explain why over approximately 166 popes are not in the ground right now. That's what they're telling us. The first few centuries in particular, little is known.
Girl.
Yeah, little is known of the popes and their tombs, and available information is often contradictory. As with other religious relics, multiple sites claim to house the same tomb. Furthermore, many papal tombs that recycled sarcophagi and other materials from earlier tombs were later recycled for their valuable materials or combined with other monuments. For example, the tomb of Pope Leo I was combined with Leo's II, III, and IV, circa 855. And
Maybe
then-
because they were all the same person.
it's the same guy, Pope Leo, Leo 1, Leo's 2, 3, 4, and then they're like, okay,
I'm
bro,
like,
you gotta go. You've been
Well,
here too
it's
long.
like how many popes are also named the same? Pope John, how many was that? Like 23?
Yeah.
It's come on.
It's more that Saint Germain type thing, right? Like it's just the
Yeah.
same guy, just keeps coming back. Matthew McConaughey every 100 years keeps reinventing himself. That's so crazy. But I think the most notable part about this is not just that we see like the same guy reusing the same tomb every couple of decades when he fakes his death, but that we have at this point 166 popes that they don't know where they are. They don't actually know
Oh.
where their body is. That's
They're
what they're
missing.
saying. Yeah, because this is the 100 extant tombs that are at least partially there. They kind of know for sure. There's 166 of them that they don't know where they are. And that tells me there's 166 popes comprised of possibly the same few people recycled a lot. Maybe it's 4 dozen people or 3 dozen people or whatever. But again, we're dealing with like the potential that there's 166 vampires who served as popes that are still around today doing other things, like Chuck Schumer or something. God only knows.
Well, if you think about it, every single president always reports to the Pope. Why
Right.
is that?
Yeah.
Every single one of them, they pay homage, they get all weird dressed up and like they're going to a funeral,
Yeah.
especially the women. Women, I use that loosely, but
right. The wives of the first whoever.
yeah. Yeah, the first husbands.
The first husband. Yeah, it's a very interesting thing to think about that they all serve the Vatican, and then we ask all the time about like what is the secret in the basement of the Vatican? Like what is it that the secret societies? What is the secret that the secret societies are keeping? We always say stuff like, well, they covered up the millennial reign. I think that's true.
Right.
They cover up for your kingdom identity in Christ. That's definitely true. They cover up for the purpose, the call for dominion, the responsibilities, and all the things that come with the kingdom. But what's one other thing they probably cover up? Well, the fact that they're all directly the descendants of Satan. And you look back, you see the Pharisees running Jerusalem during the time of Christ, and Christ says to them, you are of your father, the devil. How can you say that this guy is their dad if you don't know that they share his blood? And if they share his blood, what might the Pharisees be if not a group of ruling elites that very well might be vampires, just like the ruling elites of today?
Considering that Jesus called them vipers, and vipers have fangs.
Snake-like.
I'm just snake-like. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm
You
just-
brood of serpents, he says.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
You brood of
vipers, in the case, like in the correct. Yeah, very, very interesting. And all of that seems to tie into the same simple concept, which is that we are in an age-old war for the souls of humanity and for control of the realm of earth, which God has created to expand his kingdom. And luckily for those of us who are part of his kingdom, we get to see the world through a new set of eyes. That's the blessing of this, is that we can scope these concepts and these theories and these instances. We can investigate this stuff from the perspective of a righteous worldview that allows us to dig in, wear a costume, have a good time, and talk about this stuff, but also approach it in a very tactful and open mindset that is, again, grounded in our faith in Christ and our understanding that we are facing an ancient war for the state of the realm and for all of God's people here in this day and age. It's a very incredible thing.
Awesome.
I'm amazed. The more I dig into this, the more I want to dig into it. The deeper I want to go.
Yeah.
But obviously, we can't go on forever about it. And
Yeah.
But I think that. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say there was a museum that I came across during my research for all of this, Cornelius S.C. Rotter, who the internet seems as a fictional character, but I mean, people can decide for themselves. But they found all sorts of different cryptid collections within his, I guess it was hidden underground or something like that in his little. He was into the occult and everything, so he's got some pretty interesting stuff. Looks like a fairy. One of them is a werewolf. Just all different kinds of cryptids and stuff. They're trying to say that it's fabricated, but we also know like who writes the history, and usually the stories are always inverted. So,
well, let's read about it here. It says the story of Cornelius S.C. Rotter and his forgotten legacy is a fictional theatrical narrative created by the Museum Obscurum in Denmark. The museum presents Rotter as an eccentric 19th century collector of occult and cryptozoological curiosities, but the artifacts and backstory are a blend of fact and fabrication.
Fact and fabrication. I'm just pointing that out.
Yeah, there's some of it's true. There's something there, but we're not going to tell you which it is.
Right.
The museum's fictional lore portrays Rotter as a man of noble German-Danish descent who was born in 1821 in Nykøbing Falster. The change of direction. After beginning medical studies in Copenhagen, he supposedly abandoned science for the occult after a trip to Italy, where the Vatican is, in 1856.
The Vatican, yet again.
Right? I didn't say that, but, I'm seeing the connection there. There's a red yarn string going from the Copenhagen to the Vatican right now, Mr. Rotter. All right.
Yep.
There he met the also fictional crypto-naturalist Thomas Marilyn, who inspired Rotter to assemble his own peculiar collection. So, the also fictional crypto-naturalist. So there's another guy to look into lately.
What are the chances?
Thomas Marilyn. Oh, but it's all not real. Don't worry. This is during the time when, in the mid 1800s and stuff, that's when they were really covering up the old world actively. So I'm sure there were all these people that had weird old world things and curiosities that had to be erased because we were moving into the modern age, the new world order, where there are no fairies or giants. We're all just living on a cold computer chip city, and you just work and do whatever they say, The narrative claims that Rotter concealed a dark collection within a secret room of his house. This hidden chamber and its crates of artifacts were discovered in 2017 during renovations of the building, which now houses the Museum Obscurum. Oh, that's so cool. So it's the same building. So we have the website here for it. So it was literally this guy's house. They moved in, stole everything, took credit for it. Wow. So this is the common fae. So there's a small humanoid fairy. This looks like
it just makes me think of too that portion in the circus where they have all of the the bearded woman and the people that are covered in hair and all of that. Like, how different were those oddities on display in the millennial, not prior to the millennial kingdom, or even shortly thereafter, where these creatures,
or even within it, right? Because I can imagine the conquesting kingdom of Christ would have had establishments like this, where they had museums, where they looked at the, institutions that thought we should understand these creatures on not just a spiritual level, but scientifically. And I'm sure they had, werewolves in boxes and stuff. Like, why wouldn't they? I would. I'd be dissecting all kinds of monsters to figure out what the heck was going on here.
Right.
Very interesting stuff. They say this werewolf starved to death at age 15. Oh, female werewolf. See, how would you know that it starved to death and stuff? Like, okay, it's just made up or whatever, but like, is it?
Is it though?
Like, look at how humanoid that thing's shape is.
Like, if I were to think werewolf, right, that's what I would imagine, something that looks a little bit more human versus what we see, theatrically, basically,
This is a
where they
sea
turn
gnome.
into actual.
They're calling this a sea gnome, which assisted sailors in their duties. It's this little thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what duties he was assisting me with, but they got like a ship and stuff. Like, oh, this gnome, he helped you out. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And like, look at that. What is that? Like a fish guy? Like, it's so creepy. The anatomy of this thing, look at how it has, like, its legs are one leg and it has a single foot fin. Like, it's like when you see mermaids in Disney and stuff, they're all pretty, but this is like a lot more what it would probably be like a creepy man thing, a creepy Atlantean merman monster thing. Super creepy.
Yeah.
We've come back around. It's the enigmatic curio cabinet of an eccentric 19th century collector. Anyway, we kind of went over the base of it, but it is interesting to think, there's a lot of these out there in the world, that turn of the century in the 1900s with so many oddities and curiosities. It makes you wonder, with the Smithsonian actively rounding up all the giant bones at every national park, they must have also been hard at work making sure that none of this that was too convincing remained available to the public. This being kind of a blurred edge where you don't know, is that a real werewolf? I don't know. And even if there was, they'd probably have a display instead of the real one out there. So you could never really like get in there, rip a chunk of its flesh off, send it to a lab and have it tested. Because ultimately, it's, even if you did, this is probably a mock-up of the real one if there is. And so there's that obscurity that will always escape us when it comes to things like this, where there's always going to be like a bit of a disconnect because we don't have control of the levers of power at the Vatican or in our government to control the Smithsonian. It kind of ties into something I've been talking about a lot lately about dominion and how important it is that Christians do get control of these systems and levers so that we can have the truth and so that we can access the Vatican basement and figure out if there's a secret vampire coven under the Vatican or whatever. I don't know. We need to know.
I'm going to go out on a ledge and say chances are high.
I think that the odds are pretty high that there's a vampire coven beneath the Vatican.
Yeah.
No doubt. And of course, you know, it's we're allowed to speculate. We're here having a great time anyway. Well, I found out, obviously, I have your final link here for some Bible verses about vampires. I think we should look into that and kind of see.
You know, I got to bring it back to scripture.
Yeah,
every
let's
time.
go.
Yeah.
All right, so these are some Bible verses related to vampires from the King James Version by relevance, and of course, some are probably going to be more so relevant than others, but let's check it out. Proverbs 30:14. There's a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaw teeth as knives, to devour the poor from off the earth and the needy from among men. It's
Sounds
great.
very reminiscent of what's going on right now.
It does. It even ties into what I was saying about like living in the subterranean catacombs and like taking people and eating them and stacking their bones. Like, who are they? The poor people and the needy, the homeless people who are lost in the streets. And, you know, it's kind of creepy, but right now there's been a case that's been going viral on the internet where multiple homeless camps have completely cleaned up and left in various large cities, and nobody knows where all the homeless people went. So there's been all these large communes in the forests outside of major cities, and then guys will come over to check on them, and all there is like tents and sleeping bags abandoned, garbage everywhere, but no people. And it's like, man, the implication that those people are missing for this kind of purpose is scary. And, you know, when the Bible says there's a generation, it doesn't just mean there's people born in a certain timeline who are a certain age today, like how we do Generation X, Generation Y, so on and so forth. But what they really mean is there is a genetic family. There's a line of genes whose teeth are as swords, their jaw teeth as knives, to devour the poor off the earth and the needy from among men. Meaning those people who don't have homes to hide in, the people who don't have resources to protect themselves, those are the people who are consumed by the teeth as swords monsters. Very crazy. Leviticus 17:10-14 says, "And whatsoever man there be of the house of Israel or of the strangers that sojourn among you that eateth any manner of blood, I will set my face against that soul that eateth blood and will cut him off from among his people." Wow. So if there's a man of Israel or strangers that sojourn among you that eateth any manner of blood. Interesting. So the bloodsuckers are bad. That's what Leviticus is saying. And whether they're from Israel or from somewhere else that comes into this place, if they do this, he will set his face against the soul that eateth blood and cut him off from among his people. Whoops. And cutting him off, oftentimes the Bible, cut him off means to kill. To be cut off means to be killed. So they're talking about how they will kill them off so that they're not around, because it's a monster race of evil satanic parasites probably. Revelation 16:6, "For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy." Interesting. They who have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. Meaning that they have, I don't know what exactly we're referring to in this context-wise, but I know that there's talk about the enemy prevailing against the saints and stuff. And this, I think, speaks to that idea that you would have fought against them, saints and prophets who were the victims of this blood-shedding evil force. And thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy, meaning that these enemies are successful in their campaign against you, so that you end up being the blood that they drink. They're worthy, not because in spirit they deserve it, but because they're successful. They have the capacity to succeed. The language of the Bible is really important, I think, when people are reading this stuff, to understand what things what they mean, especially in the time that the Bible's written. Like, worthy means that they possess what is needed to become the ones who have shed the blood of saints and prophets. Anyway, Joel 1:6, "For a nation is come up upon my land, strong and without number, whose teeth are the teeth of a lion, and he hath the cheek teeth of a great lion." Cheek teeth. A couple of fangos, strong and without number, is come up upon my land. From where, though? From like a subterranean cave where they were hanging out, like I was saying earlier, like they've come up upon my land.
Yeah.
Very interesting. The list goes on. First Chronicles 11:19, God said, "My God, forbid it me that I should just do this thing. Shall I drink the blood of these men that have put their lives in jeopardy? For with the jeopardy of their lives they brought it. Therefore he would not drink it. These things did these three mightiest." Not sure if I quite
Why
understand.
would he even be contemplating drinking the blood, though, you know? unless it was the thing that was already happening back then.
Right. It could also be metaphorical too, because it's like you're consuming their
True.
blood. Because it's like, God forbid it to me that I should do this thing. Shall I drink the blood of these men that have put their lives in jeopardy? As in, these people are taking the risk. Should I be the one responsible for their deaths? For with the jeopardy of their lives, they brought it. Therefore, he would not drink it. These things did these three mightiest. As in, he doesn't want to, like, let's say you had a group of guys who swore they'd fight to the death for your cause, but you say, I don't want you to do this. I don't want this to be the hill you die on. Yeah. I'd have to read the whole concept, the whole passage to really get context, but I think that in some cases it's not always about vampires, but there are instances that are, obviously, for sure. Only be sure that thou eat not the blood, for the blood is the life, and thou mayest not eat the life with the flesh. I mean, that's a straight up anti-vampire passage.
Yeah.
Deuteronomy 12:23. Thou mayest not eat the life with the flesh. Therefore, do not eat the blood. For the blood is life. It's crazy too, because, right, the life is in the blood is life. These vampires are consuming life because they're dead. Their souls are gone, their bodies are rotten, they are undead, and they're seeking life through the blood.
And we know that our life is written in our blood and in our DNA. So I think that when they're drinking it, they're actually trying to experience our life and what was written in our book of life, because they don't get one.
That's true. That's just like the Nephilim wanting to possess people as their disembodied demon souls, trying to get inside bodies to experience carnality because they've been living in the dry places for so long. And I think this is another way by which you become a vessel for these demons. Imagining if you were transformed into a creature of the night, a cryptid or some sort of a vampire, that you'd be an open house for demons to enter and manifest within you, which I think is also probably why we have so much difficulty tracking down cryptids, because they're not alone. They're followed by a harem of spiritual entities that can protect them and tell them where to turn to and where to run, even perhaps obscuring your vision so you can't see what you were just seeing. Not that maybe a Bigfoot can't turn invisible, but that maybe a fallen entity or a demon can create an obscuration in your vision so you can't see it. Something to think about. Revelation 17:6, and I saw the woman drunken with the blood of saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. There is a generation that curseth their father. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. Drunken with the blood of saints and martyr and the blood of Jesus. When I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. I'm not sure what this exactly refers to. This is separate than this. But Revelation 9:8, they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lion. So long hair and big lion teeth. Interesting. What's going on here? Why is this one so... It requires us to read more on another page?
It's probably the entire verse,
Oh, it is, whose teeth are as swords. Anyway. Deuteronomy 32:17. They sacrificed unto devils, not to God, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not.
I'm pretty sure that was like the most, the last one really that really pertained to it. The other ones, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it seems like really some of them are
part of it. But
but I do really think that a couple of these are very significant. Like the one that says in Deuteronomy not to eat the blood, for the blood is life. Don't eat it. And then obviously Leviticus, where it says anyone who does this, like eating the blood, I will set my face against them and cut them off. And then there's this generation. There's this genetic makeup whose teeth are as swords and their jaw teeth as knives, meaning they have fangs on top and the bottom. That's what that means. So I think that when we get vampire in lore and we have like regular old double fangs, they're probably actually carnivore dragon teeth, like reptile, like and that's because it's Dracula. Anyway, so Draco of the dragon. Very interesting.
I just point out really fast that generation is also, I got to bring it back it's represented by the pictograph noon, which actually means offspring also, or perpetuation of a generation. So it is a seed line, basically.
Yep.
So
there is a seed of beings whose teeth are as swords, and jaws are as knives, to devour the poor off the earth and the needy from among men. And it's Proverbs. It's just wisdom. We just know this. That there out there are some vampires, bro. There be vampires. It's like
I'm not saying it's vampires, but it's vampires.
But it's vampires. Hey, that's crazy, you know? That is really crazy. And all things considered, there really is obviously so much more to learn and so much more to explore, but it does sound to me like the bottom line is that it is possible that there's some truth behind the stories of vampires, and that not only is there truth, but it's even possible that this thing we've come to know as fiction or a curse could actually be the product of a bacteria, a virus, a disease, a parasite, or even something that exists in the ancient blood of the descendants of a dragon, Dracula, the son of the dragon. God only knows. But we stay vigilant. We keep our eyes on the Lord, the author and perfecter of our faith, so that we do not grow weary, and we maintain our quest, destination kingdom. You know, no matter what it is, creatures, beasts, land, history, symbols, signs, whatever it is, it all belongs to God, and it will all be reclaimed by him in the new heaven and the new earth, of which we are all blessed to have the opportunity to be a part of because of that beautiful atoning sacrifice of Christ Jesus, because his blood was poured out for all of us. Not that he was a bloodthirsty monster like these, but that he actually gave his blood, which is a very, very different thing than something that hunts and steals blood, rather one that brings and offers his blood for us. It's an amazing contrast, for sure.
Amen.
Well, Wendy, you got anything else you want to give to us today before we wrap it up?
Wear your full armor of Yah every single day.
Amen. Absolutely. I can concur with that. You got to have that full armor. It is so, so necessary. All right, Wendy. Well, thank you so much for joining us. You know, we always have a great time with you on here. I'm sure the audience is happy to have you back for another one, a special spooky episode. And obviously, thank all of you guys for being here today, for joining us for a special spooky episode of the Main Character Podcast. And thanks for being here, Wendy.
Thanks so much for having me. I had a blast. It was a great time.
It was awesome. We'll definitely do it again soon. Well, with all that being said, guys, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Main Character Podcast. In this case, thank you for joining us for level 66 of the Main Character Podcast, made possible by the Cult of Khan. That's you guys. I am the Count of Khan, and thank you for being here. All right, y'all, take it easy. We'll see you in the next one. Oh, it froze. I'm the king, I'm rejecting. We'll try that one again. Rearranging your mentality, got some Kool-Aid you can drink. It's a scam, it's a plan, it's a con, and I'm your man. You know I tell it like it is. I hold the secrets in my hands. Reflection and introspection is my profession. I'm recklessly disrespecting what you expect and investing in my discretion, teaching the lessons, impressions to keep you guessing what I do next, man.
Now when the 1,000 years have expired, Satan will be released from his prison. He will go forth to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together for the final battle, an army whose number is as the sand of the sea.
It's amazing the affirmations that come my way when I fake it until I make it. The truth is waiting, complacent organizations. They say I'm racist, they hate and they making payments on my vacation. I'm the man, I'm the king, I'm rejecting what you think. Rearranging your mentality, got some Kool-Aid you can drink. It's a scam, it's a plan, it's a con, and I'm your man. You know I tell it like it is. I hold the secrets in my hands. Reflection and introspection is my profession. I'm recklessly disrespecting what you expect and investing in my discretion, teaching the lessons, impressions to keep you guessing what I do next, man. I'm the man, I'm the king, I'm rejecting what you think. Rearranging your mentality, got some Kool-Aid you can drink. It's a scam, in my hand.